Hey everyone, welcome to Kingdom Builder TV. I'm your host, Jay Heilman. Thank you so much for coming by today. Well, this is a treat today. I get a chance to be joined by somebody who actually was a guest writer for Today's Christian Entertainment years ago, wrote a couple reviews for our site, and may remember him if you watch the show American Idol. He was on season 6 back in 2007, where he was in the top 6 of that show. So I'm excited to finally be joined by Phil Stacey. Phil, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. An honor to be with you. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to have you on here. And, looking back, American Idol's been on for a long time. It's gone through 2 networks. It was originally on Fox, now it's on ABC. Looking back on that in season 6, we're talking, what's that, a long time ago. That's like 18 years ago. Does it
Yeah.
seem
I
like
mean,
it's been
well,
that long since you were on the show?
yeah, my daughter, we'll be talking about my song that I just put out, and I did it with my daughter, who's now 18 years old, and she was actually born the day I auditioned for American Idol. They did a whole big segment about it at the very end of our
Yeah.
show, that literally the day I auditioned for Simon, Randy, and Paula, my daughter was being born. So it's been that long. Now she's headed off to college this fall. So
Wow.
crazy,
Yeah.
man. It's been a long time.
Kids grow up so quickly, man. And it's funny because it's almost like she grew up with Idol. She was there
True.
the day that you tried out, and she was a fixture on that. It's just
Mhm.
it's cool. It's kind of like a full circle moment to be able to see that. Not only being a contestant on the show, but in 2023 she was a contestant. So going back to the beginning, you tried out for the OGs. You tried out for the original judges on the show, Paula Randy and Simon. Um, what was it like, you know, when you went through that process? So to kind of give preface to that, I've actually talked to a lot of people that have been on American Idol. I've had Colton Dixon on here before. I've talked to Jeremy Rosado and a lot of people that were on the show. And,
Right.
it's kind of cool to hear, like the backstory on how they, got on the show. But tell us about your experience. What was it that really got you, wanting to try out to begin with?
Well, for those who don't remember, American Idol was the biggest show in the world. It was huge. And so if you were a singer back then, somebody said, you should audition for American Idol. This is before The Voice. This is before America's Got Talent and all that stuff.
Mm.
Um, and I was in the Navy band at the time. So I was actually in the U.S. Navy. This was post September the 11th. My generation went and signed up. When they found out I had a music degree, they invited me to audition for a band. And I became the lead singer for a rock band. And of course, everywhere we went, it was, oh man, you should audition for American Idol. But man, you had huge stars coming out of that show. You had, back then, Carrie Underwood, Kelly Clarkson, Chris Daughtry. In fact, the season before I was on, I think the entire top 10 got record deals. Like every single one of the people in the top 10 got record deals, and they were putting out big records. Um, but then I missed one of my friend's weddings because I was in the Navy, and he jokingly said the only way he'd forgive me is if I auditioned for American Idol. And I thought it'd be a fun experience. And so being in the Navy, you don't really belong to yourself. I had to go to my commanding officer and say, "Hey, what if I did this? Would this be something you get behind?" He's like, "Well, yeah, if you want to go try it out, check it out, go for it." And so I went with one of my friends from Jacksonville, Florida, where I lived at the time, to Memphis, Tennessee. And in Memphis alone, there were 16,000 people that auditioned that season in Memphis alone at the FedEx Forum. So it wasn't something I thought I had a chance to actually get through, not even the first level. And so I showed up, I think probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Back then, that's what you did. It was called a cattle call. And you literally just showed up at this huge arena. And I didn't sing it wasn't the original judges. It was like 12 tables in the middle of the FedEx Forum that like two random people are sitting at, and they let you through to the next round or not. And I didn't sing until 9 or 10 o'clock p.m. And I sang for probably a total of 10 or 15 seconds. And I just watched them waving people off one by one, just no, no, you're amazing. Thank you. No, no. And I just figured I was going to be one of those. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, we're going to send you through. And it was
Mm.
a shock. It was a shock. In fact, I called my commanding officer and said, "Hey, I made it through." And he was like, "Well, what do we do now? What if we actually make it on the show? What do we do?" And of course, there were two more auditions before I actually met Simon, Randy, and Paula. And it was over a month. I think my first audition was September the 2nd. I met them on October 5th, which I remember obviously because of my daughter's birthday. Um, and yeah, made it onto the show. And I'll tell you, it was as much a shock to me as it was anybody. I could not believe it. I felt so surreal about it. Back then, you didn't know if it was rigged, if they had cast these shows or whatever, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I used to watch a show, more often back in the early years and stuff. I sing and I play guitar and stuff. I'm not a professional by any means, but I remember watching the show, and especially in those early seasons when you had the original three judges,
Mhm.
when you go in front of these judges and sing, I know Paula's the sweet one. She's the one that's she had a great recording career herself. She
Yeah.
was the one that was kind of sweet to everybody. Randy was more like he was a musician, was real with you if he liked you or not. It was like, yeah, dog, I'm just not feeling it. It's I got kind of like the comedic
That was a
thing to that. But
perfect impersonation.
Simon was more of the one that I would be intimidated with, and I know a lot of people. When I've asked people that question, what was it like working with these judges? A lot of them were like, I was worried about Simon because he was kind of intimidating. Was that at all the impression that you got? What was your impression of the judges? Like, were you nervous to go in front of them? Did you see any of the other auditions and like kind of how the judges reacted to those?
I think my experience was unique because I had no expectation. I didn't think I was going to make it. So I got to just soak it in and enjoy it. I wasn't nervous at all when I sang for the original judges. Because I at that point I assumed that either I was going to make it through just because my daughter was born, or I wasn't going to make it through because there's so many great singers. Um, and my whole audition was it's on YouTube. People can watch it. It wasn't great. I was tired. I got woke up at like 3 o'clock that morning to hear the sound of my baby being born, and so I was very upset with myself for missing that. Um, because she came early. I was gone for one day. I flew from Jacksonville to Tennessee for one day, and that one day, uh, McKayla is born. So I felt really disappointed in myself that I wasn't there. In fact, when I got to the forum, I told the producers that I couldn't audition. I was going to have to get on a plane. And they were like, "Well, why?" And I said, "Well, my baby was born last night." And this was before like everybody had a story. It was before every single person had this deep dive backstory where you found out everything about them. But all of a
Yeah.
sudden, there's cameras in my face, and they're like, "Tell us more." And of course, they turned it into a big story. I don't even, obviously it's been 18 years, but standing there in that room, I remember that it was a little cool. It was a little cold. So I could tell from walking into it, my voice wasn't going to feel great about singing there. I tend to feel more comfortable in a warm room. But I honestly, bro, did not even care. At that point, I had a great job in the Navy band. They weren't going to be upset with me if I didn't make it through, and it would be a good story to tell on the road with the Navy band. Hey, Phil auditioned for these guys. So no, I wasn't nervous yet. I got nervous during the live show, but at that point, it was just novelty.
Well, I think that's pretty cool because and it's almost to me it would be kind of intimidating in a way because once you get to that live point where you're actually performing live on TV, I would think that the nerves would start racking up a little bit.
Oh, it's
And
horrible then.
but
Yeah.
but you made it all the way into the top six, which is and I'm sure that when from where you started, like you said, you had no expectations. You
Hmm.
were you weren't sure or really cared at that point. Like if you made it through, it's just something an experience for you. But when you got into that, top six when you finished that show, what was that experience like? Making it into the top fold of that show that year.
So if any of your uh, if any of your audience remembers Chris Sly, Chris
Hmm.
Sly was on the show with me, and Chris has become a very successful songwriter. He's written number one songs for groups in country music, but he's a very brutally honest guy. Almost, I wouldn't say he's spectrum, but and he's become one of my dearest friends. He's a very close friend of mine. To this day, by the way. I have a text thread with the entire top 10 from my season, and we talk almost every week. But Chris would tell me, I was so nervous. He'd be like, well, I don't think you're going to get to this next level or whatever. And I just kept making it. We kept laughing back and forth over and over again. And when he got eliminated top 10 week, if you see the video, he actually comes to me and we crack a joke about how I made it further than he did because he was at that point, he was pretty much established as a Christian artist in his region and he was doing really well on the show. But yeah, I think once you get on the show, there's some people who flip into artist mode, right? There's people who are like, this is my career I'm building. And for some reason in my head, I was thinking about all the people I represented. It wasn't Phil Stacey. It was the Navy. It was my church. It was my faith, because I was a Christian. I didn't want to do any songs that might be offensive to people or who were in the Christian audience, but I also didn't want to do songs that were morally compromising. I wanted to make Jesus look good. I wanted to make my alma mater look good. I wanted to make, the Navy look good. So there's all of that stuff that kind of prohibits you from like this full expression of artistry, but it also keeps you almost paralyzed because you're worried about every word that's coming out of your mouth, every song that you're getting up to sing. So yeah, man, I mean, I remember one particular week where Jordan Sparks and Melinda Doolittle and I were sitting backstage and I'm looking down and my pant legs are shaking. And I think of this old Rich Mullins song called Hold Me Jesus, because hold me Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf. And I was just shaking like a leaf. And I just start singing it. And all of a sudden, Jordan sings the high part and Melinda starts singing this middle part. And I think we pretty much sang Hold Me Jesus before every performance the rest of the time that we were on,
It's
together
cool.
at least. Um, so it's kind of like this prayer thing, but I think as a minister and as somebody who grew up in a ministry home, I was confident that I wasn't there by my own merit. I saw plenty of singers better than me that had been eliminated or gone home during Hollywood Week or whatever. So I felt like there was a purpose for it, but it still just was so paralyzing, man. The fear, I couldn't begin to describe it for you. I will tell you that I had never been so nervous in all of my
Mhm.
life. And I really felt like, at this point, I can't let my friends down. I can't let the Navy down. That was pretty much the whole journey for me, man.
Yeah, I like seeing the stories unfold out and then seeing you know, what's in store after the show. Because that's, the next thing, you get signed to a record deal.
Right.
But the thing that I was always curious about is that, on the show, you sing a wide variety of songs in different genres. You're not really stuck to one genre, even if you are that particular type of singer. Like there's a lot of people I've seen on the show over the years that you hear them sing and it's obvious they would go into country music or it's obvious they go into rock music. But you kind of surprised me because your voice was fitting so many genres on that show. I
Thank
think
you.
you finished out the show with a Bon Jovi song. So
Hmm.
you have this, I thought like Phil's gonna be this rocker. He's gonna go out and do this, rock record. But you kind of surprised me because when you released your first record, it was more geared towards the country market. And then the following record, your first Christian record on Provident, was more going back more towards pop rock and stuff. So when you left Idol to do your first record, um, how did you decide what kind of music that you wanted to kind of go into, or was that something that was suggested to you? Was that something you wanted to do?
I got three record deal offers coming off of American Idol. Um, Actually, if you count a minor one, it was four, but they were all country. There weren't any Christian labels that came and talked to me. There weren't any, but my management, like right off the bat, Jordan Sparks had been managed by the same company that managed Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant, as a kid. She had toured with Michael W. Smith.
Yeah.
And they came to see her, and I met these guys, Michael Blanton, Chaz Corzine, uh, and we immediately struck up a friendship. And they were kind of, as soon as I got eliminated, they were like, "Hey, man, can we manage you? Can we help you find a label home and all that stuff?" And I'm like, "Of course." Yeah, and my enlistment period for the Navy was up, so perfect time. I mean, just perfect timing. Literally 2 days after the American Idol tour, I went and filled out my paperwork to get out of the Navy. And so those guys were there, and they immediately wanted me to sign to Lyric Street Records, which was home to Rascal Flatts, Shadazy, Bucky Covington. They'd done great with Bucky Covington the year before. And I think they liked that pop sound, but my biggest week was probably Country Music Week on American Idol. I sang a Keith Urban song, and so, bro, that's just what came to me. And the truth is, I love that you said that there was kind of a diverse background because I wasn't really a jack of all trades as much as I had experience in the Navy band. You don't get to choose your genre. You have to
Yeah.
sing Journey songs like Steve Perry. You have to sing Guns N' Roses songs like Axl Rose. You have to sing My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy. You have to sound as much like those records as possible because nobody's there to see you. They're there to have fun and
Yeah.
experience this night where basically you could have just had a DJ come in and sing, but they want to hear those songs like the original artists. So I would say that even I was 29 when I was on American Idol. And I had no idea who I was as an artist. I did have a background because I'm from the South. I was born in Kentucky. I had this background in country music. I grew up, with Johnny Cash and even Bill Monroe, if you know that name,
Mhm.
classic bluegrass stuff. So it was something that, when a country record label signed me, dude, I started writing these real Southern sounding songs, and I took them to my label, and they laughed at me. Like in the meeting, they were literally just chuckling, and they're like, "Hey, here, we've got writers, and they're great writers. Here's songs that you can pick from instead." But they wanted that pop sound. If you listen to the record, it's more like a rock pop record that has a mandolin on it, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what Lyric Street Records did really well. But so even I think anybody who listened to that record can tell there's great musicians on it. It's really well produced. It's produced by Wayne Kirkpatrick, who's just a genius. He's been with Christian music since like the 80s. And then he discovered and helped put out Little Big Town. So the record was put together well, but there isn't like a distinct identity vocally. I think our president of my label, he was a Christian man named Randy Goodman, and he wanted to put a Christian song on there. So we found this song identity that kind of matched this Christian theme, and it's literally a pop rock song that I think they put a fiddle on.
Yeah.
um, so it was a lot of fun, but it was a very confusing project.
Well, your Christian debut project on Provident Into the Light was my first introduction really into your music as a whole,
Yeah,
and I was really drawn on that record, man. It was a great record,
thank you.
and that's what really hooked me into Phil Stacey. And I remember hearing releases and stuff over the years, but you know your Idol experience was amazing in its own right. McKayla was born the day that you tried out, but let's fast forward to 2023, kind of a full circle moment for you. Um, McKayla tries out for Idol, gets into that, and I saw the episode where you were in there. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I'm thinking, I'm like, this must be a pretty full circle moment for Phil to have got on this show and then is sitting there accompanying his daughter to try out for the show and even play piano on that tryout with her, which was awesome. She wasn't able to join us this morning because of jet lag, but you
Right.
know, what was the experience like for her? I mean, was this something that, she had obviously had seen the auditions later on of you doing the show? Was that something that she decided, hey, I want to do this? Or, how did that come up with her auditioning for the show?
Well, she was barely old enough to audition. And no, she did not think about auditioning. Neither did we. It was her older sister. I have a daughter that's 3 years older than her. That as soon as she was eligible, Chloe emailed a registration to email, and she woke her up the morning of her audition and said, "Hey, I need you to get ready because I scheduled you an audition for American Idol." And so, it was all Zoom. They did it in the basement of our house in Wichita, Kansas. Um, and she made it through the first two levels on her own merit. Nobody had any idea who she was. And then I think it was the third audition that she had that they were like, "Well, what did you audition?" And she's like, "Well, actually, my dad was on American Idol." And of course, at that point, they're like, "Well, we're definitely having you meet the judges then." Um, it was cool in one way, but at the same time, people don't really think about the negative mental health drawbacks to being a part of a show that's seen by millions of people.
Mm,
Um, if you don't do stuff like that, you get to wonder what would have happened if you had an opportunity. Once you get out there, you know exactly what everybody thinks of you. You know if they think you're good. You know if they don't think you're good. She had never sang on a stage like that before in her life. She's been in high school or at that point, middle school musicals, and she sang in church a few times. So I was scared for her because I've seen a show like American Idol suck the joy out of people. There are people that go on there and they fall into a depression, and nobody talks about it. You get to be the one to break it to people, but there are people who fall into a depression after a show like that because they find out they don't have it. Or people don't think, they've worked their entire lives and they haven't gotten to a level that people were like, "Oh, wow." And I just didn't want people to suck the joy out of my kid. I didn't want her to lose the love of singing. And you know, I got to watch her be bold. I got to watch her get up and, sing in front of Katy Perry and Lionel Richie and Luke Bryan like a pro, but I knew she was scared. And playing for her, I was nervous. Like my hands, you talked about me playing the piano, my hands were shaking.
mm,
But I hadn't met Lionel Richie. I had done shows with Luke Bryan before. I've never met Katy Perry. They had no idea who I was. They didn't remember me because obviously this was, 15, 16, 17 years ago that I'd met them or done stuff with them. But it was just so crazy, man, to be in that room and watching my daughter kind of blossom. Watching her have this experience where it ended up being very affirming for her. Even though she didn't make it very far, I think she got cut her first performance during Hollywood Week. She got up right after this girl who did so well, this, 20 something girl who was such an amazing singer that literally Katy Perry took her jacket off and threw it at her. Lionel Richie stopped the show afterwards to tell the entire audience, "Hey, this is the kind of thing we're looking for. This star power, this power, or whatever." And then my daughter gets out there with this really soft ballad immediately after that. And I knew, like in my heart, I was like, there's no way she stands out with this particular song after that performance. And I was nervous she was going to get cut. And she did. And it was a sad night. It was one of those things where we ended up going back to the hotel room and she cried and she didn't know how to experience it. But the very next morning, she was like, "All right, I need voice lessons. I'm going to dig deeper." And so she took it serious, and it was really cool for me as a father to see that a blow like that, it didn't set her back. It didn't
mm,
destroy her. Instead, it inspired her. She's like, I'm young. I can still learn. I can still do better. And she has. It opened a lot of doors, man. For the last couple of years, you mentioned it was 2023 she was on. It's been 2 years now. We've actually done shows together all over the world. We have, we're going to be in Sri Lanka next week singing. And I've gotten to watch her. She's been featured at these big events here in Wichita, Kansas, where they've got the big fireworks shows just by herself as a solo artist. And it's really cool to watch her thrive and to see her really pursue her passion. And unlike me, she's getting to do this with her own voice. She didn't have to sing Marvin Gaye music like Marvin Gaye. She's really encouraged. Hey, be McKayla. Enjoy what you're doing. She's like, I do I have to write to a specific genre? I'm like, baby, you're 18 years old. Do whatever you want. Like musically, do what you want. She's got a great relationship with Jesus. She's got a deep faith, and so I trust her. And she's been really doing great. So that's what I would say about her experience on American Idol. It was very inspiring for me to watch. Yes, it was nerve-wracking, but it was inspiring, bro.
oh, I bet, yeah. As a dad, like looking at that, like hoping and praying that she does good, but not only that, but like hoping that it was a good experience for her. And at her age, it's like I have an 18-year-old too, and you know when you look at your children at that age, it's like okay, they're at an age to where they're gonna have to start making their own decisions. They're gonna have to start making their own life choices and stuff. Did I
Right.
do enough in order to instill what they're going to be using for the rest of their life?
Yeah,
And
and the answer
for
to that
me,
question is no. We don't do enough. But I think
yeah,
one of the benefits that we get is our trust in God.
Yeah.
that we can trust the Holy Spirit to do a work in our kids, like, because all we can do really is our best. And with a child, with actually bringing a child into this world, there's nothing you can do to fully prepare them. But we can trust God to help with like the little nuances, the little things that we may not even see that we're doing that's effective. They see us praying. They see us having faith that even when things don't work out, that God has another step that He's prepared for us. Um, I think that's where we've got to be at this point, is where we're trusting God with our kids. And man, how cool is it to like see them and be like, yeah, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to work
Yeah.
out.
It's we spend our whole life, trying to raise them and, point them to Jesus the whole time. And, there are struggles. There are a lot of things that we go through that are unexpected, but the
Right.
Jesus is that constant thing that we're always pointing them at. And I look back on, I have five kids. My oldest is almost she'll be 26 this year. So it's like I look back and like thinking, man, I really hope that I did everything that I could. And in hindsight, I realize I didn't, but I was pointing them at Jesus as much as possible. And that's really the goal of any father, is to make sure that, when they're ready to go out on their own, whatever they're doing for a career or whatever,
Hmm.
that they are grounded in that faith and trust in Christ that will lead them for the rest of their lives. So to
Right.
me, that's the biggest accomplishment as a father, is like, did I do enough to show them the love of Jesus in my life, to
Yeah.
where it rubs off on them to make that decision for themselves. And looking back on this, McKayla was in this show in 2023, but I've been watching, going into this interview, Phil, I was watching interviews and stuff that you had done. One particular interview that you had done with Ryan Seacrest, um, talking about the experience on the show.
Hmm.
And I was really blown away at how professional and just like great that interview was on her part. I mean, she sounded so mature, like she had been doing these interviews and stuff for years. And I'm just sitting there watching you, and I can almost see the look in your eye, like, man, this is good stuff. I think I've done well. And I thought that was pretty cool because, you look at that and you like your kids are a reflection of you and what you've shown them and the actions that you've placed before them their whole life. So that must have been a pretty cool moment to see that and to play not only with her performances, but doing an interview, something as simple as an interview. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, she's a sharp kid, you know. Both of
Yeah.
my kids are very sharp. And I do I think one of the things, man, is just we actually have a text thread, a family text thread called Where is Dr. Obed? And it's named after this fictional therapist who's going to fix all the issues that my wife and I have put on our kids through the years, where we just do something that we're like, oh, that's not going to work. Dr. Obed will fix it. But in reality, man, I think what your kids need to see is that you love them and that we want them to have joy. We want
Yeah.
them to experience joy. I feel the pressure as a father to provide an atmosphere of joy in my home and in my kids' lives. I'm not, I'm the disciplinarian. I'm the guy who's takes your life very seriously. But at the same time, I believe God created us for joy. Uh,
Mhm.
you can tell just in the way that we taste food or hear sound or whatever, that God wants us to enjoy this experience. And that's the thing that I see when I see McKayla doing an interview, or Chloe doing what she does. She's preparing to be a neuropsychologist. She's in college to be a neuropsychologist. But you see that glimpse of joy, and you're like, that's what I saw when she was interviewing with Ryan. In these performances that she gives, I see this joy. And honestly, man, that's the most you could ask for, because we pray for these kids. I prayed
Yeah.
for my children. My wife and I wanted kids, and we prayed that God would give us kids. So now to see them as adults and experiencing joy, man, what more could we ask for?
No, yeah, I agree, man. Well, it's, jumping from Idol to now, 2025, there is a brand new song. I'm really excited about this because this is like not only a new Phil Stacey song, but
Hmm.
this is a song that Michaela actually joined you on. And this
Hmm.
is, you mentioned that you guys have performed together, but this is actually the first song that's been featured with her on it. And the song's called More Like Him. A great song. And Phil, she has an amazing voice, and I think that you guys really complement each other on
Means a
this
lot.
song. And for those who haven't, got a chance to listen to this song yet, tell us about this new song and how this came to be, and like kind of the decision to have her, do vocals on the song with you.
Yeah. Well, as I said, she's had some cool opportunities that came up since American Idol, where she's just getting invited to come out and sing at festivals or all this stuff. And so she's been in the studio and she's been writing songs. And then she suggested we do a song together. And it's difficult because, like you said, I haven't really put out a lot of new music in years. Any songs that I've written, they've been for my church where we've been, we do worship corporately. And we sat down and we work. One of the things we do is we work with nonprofit organizations. That's one of the biggest things that I do now with my music career, is basically going into towns I'll partner with this organization, and then I'll work with churches that I have a relationship with in the community. Say it's Cincinnati, Ohio, and there's an organization there. Let's use an example: Family Promise. They help homeless family. They help families who are facing homelessness and help them get placed in situations in their life where they're able to you never know what that situation may be. It may be the loss of a spouse, it may be the loss of a job or whatever, but they rally around them with the help of churches, local church communities, to lift this family out of the most desperate hour of their lives. And so I'll lend my voice to go in and I'll do a concert. We'll invite these churches out, and that way there's people in the church who may be inspired to become volunteers for Family Promise. There's a possibility of raising funds to help them to build shelters for people while they're waiting for a home to open up. And I've been doing that now, bro, for more than a decade. And one of the organizations we're working with now is called Safe Families for Children. And Safe Families for Children relies upon churches. It relies upon Christians. And what it does is it rescues kids out of it prevents them from going into the foster system. It's an organization that keeps families together. And what it does is it goes into local church ministries and it encourages church members to become surrogate families to these people who are facing some of the hardest and most trying times of their life. So they get introduced to Christ's love through people who have experienced it. So we go in to do concerts with the idea of bringing volunteers into that organization, raising funds for that organization. And when I wrote this song with McKayla, this was the organization on my mind, is if we were more like him. The song opens up, a single mom wouldn't have to wonder if anyone could ever love her because she'd already know. And the premise of that is we know Jesus does love her. We know that because we love her, and we know that it's the Lord loving her through us. So how can we demonstrate that love to the world around us? And the thought, McKayla came up with the line, if we were more like him. And I thought, man, if we could put our stamp and say there's one thing that we want to say to the entire world, there's one thing we want to say to each other is, man, if we were more like him, this world would hurt less. This world would be less painful for people if we who have experienced the love of Christ could reflect that love to people who have never experienced it. Because, man, we've gotten to experience the mountaintop. We've gotten to experience victory. God has blessed us so incredibly, man, just with these cool experiences. We haven't had to worry about the bills. We haven't had to worry about, but we've also experienced great loss. We've been in the valley. And what we've recognized is that every single one of us, as part of humanity, every one of us will experience the valley, but not everybody will experience the mountaintop. So how can we, as Christians, reflect his love to people who are in the worst, most desperate situations of their life, or even just in the midst of a valley that they just can't seem to climb out of? How can we reflect Christ to that? So I was really excited to write that song with my daughter because she gets it. She gets that message. She gets that the same way that I experience a responsibility for joy in my children's life. We have a responsibility to produce fruit. And what does Paul say that fruit of? That fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. We don't create that fruit for ourselves. We are fruit bearers. What does a fruit tree do? It doesn't produce fruit to feed itself. It produces fruit for the people who are around it. So that means that the people who are around me whether by vicinity or by relation or whatever. Every single person that comes in contact with me as a Christian, they should know that they can find love here. They should know that they can find joy here. And if we could transform the church into a bunch of fruit bearing people, into a group of people who are saying, you know what? I get to extend joy to the lives of the people who I get to interact with on behalf of Jesus Christ. Because it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Man, what if we were more like him? I think it's a powerful message, and I think it's an important time for that message. And like you, I think McKayla sounds amazing on it. So it's just really cool to be able to record a song with your kid, obviously. But I'm excited to see where this takes her. As I said, we'll be in Sri Lanka next year, but this year so far, we've already sang, we've been in Ireland, we've been in France, Italy, Spain. you know, God continues to open incredible doors, and we'll be partnering with Safe Families for Children to do a number of concerts on their behalf. And so, if people want to check out if we're going to be in their town, they can stay tuned to my website, philstacey.com. But I do encourage everybody to listen to this song and to just reflect on it. How can I be a fruit bearer on behalf of Christ? How can I be somebody when my family needs love, they know where to find it. When my family needs peace, I'm a fruit bearer. I bear that fruit. And so they can come to me and they can experience peace. Why? Because I am like a tree planted by the water, and I never cease to produce fruit because my trust is in the Lord. So I get my joy from him, Anyway,
Yeah,
you'll get a whole sermon with me, bro.
it's a great song, and it's like I get so much music. Obviously, doing a website and stuff, we get pre-release music all the time, singles, albums, EPs, and all that. And every great once in a while, there's a song that comes along that I'm like, wow, this was here at this time for a reason. And this is one of those songs. So one of those songs that Phil, we live in a divided nation, a nation full of division, whether it's politically or whatnot. And the answer is Christ, man. And it's like if we just showed that, if we as Christians were able to display that more, like the
Mm,
song says, people wouldn't have to, the world would be a better place. And I like it when, and it's when we least expect it, the song comes along and it's like, wow, this is like so, you know, pertinent to what we're going through in today's society. If we were more like Jesus, if we shown the life of Jesus in our lives more, how would that affect those around us? And it's just amazing. And like I said, I love the fact that you were able to duet with your daughter on this song. And it kind of begs the question, people might be wondering, like, she's got a beautiful voice. Are we going to hear more music from her? Is there, like you said, that she was writing and everything?
yeah.
Is there going to be like a solo from her? Is there going to be any like solo music and stuff that,
There
coming
are.
out?
She's got more songs that are being developed right now. She's got a real passion. She's got one song called "Wasting Our Youth." I don't know if she's going to keep that name, but wrote it as an encouragement to herself because obviously as a teenager, the Christian life can be a lonely life. You can be around people who are you constantly feel like you're missing out on things like I'm consecrated. I'm holy. I'm set apart, so I can't participate in some of the things that all my friends are participating in. And so
Mm,
she wrote this song, to remind not just herself, but her generation. We're not wasting our youth chasing the truth. We're not missing nothing. We got to keep on believing. And she's got a real passion to share that kind of message with people her age. So yeah, my guess is you'll hear more music from her. Obviously, you never know what's going to happen with any of these songs. We were shocked, bro. Our song has been added to more than 100 playlists on Spotify. It's in, just a few weeks' time without any, other than just sending that press release out. It's already got more than 100,000 plays on Spotify alone, and it's got plays, on Apple Music and all this stuff. We've been shocked at how people have received it, how people have contacted us over what the song means to them. So you just never know, bro, uh, how these things go. Like if radio picks it up or if they don't, or if there's opportunities that are given. But she is doing more music. She is going to be putting more music out, and if people want to follow that journey, they can, they can follow her on social media or even follow her on Spotify. She's already got some, I think, 30,000 people listening to this song on her Spotify account. So she's really excited about that, obviously. Um, but yeah, my guess is you'll hear more from McKayla.
Well, that's good to hear. And the song is actually on our top artists to look out for in 2025
Oh,
on
nice.
Spotify for today's Christians. So we got that added, and it's exciting, man. It's good when you have a song come along that really reassures you of what we're supposed to be doing. And this is one of those songs that I think people need to hear and realize that just the small things we do, man, make the biggest impacts on people's lives. And one last thing I want to talk to you about before we close out our conversation is, um, you know, you're known for music, but you're also a worship leader. So to my surprise, I can't believe I didn't know this, man. I'm looking on, I got this press release and stuff. I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I put the keynotes and stuff on here to talk with Phil about. But you wrote a book a couple years back called Made to Worship, Empty Idols in the Fullness of God. Dude, I
Mhm.
had no idea that this book even existed, man. I'm like, now I got to go on Amazon and pick a copy of this stuff because it's like, okay, I've been a huge fan of the music over the years, but I had no idea you wrote a book. So, real quickly, tell us about this book, Made to Worship, and what you're hoping readers can get from this book when they check it out.
Well, it's a focus on the family project. So, I did a concert one time, and one of the executives there was at the concert, and I shared a testimony. I've got probably three or four really, really cool stories, like biblical, awesome, miraculous stories where God saved my life or He provided for me in these incredible ways. And so I shared one of these testimonies, and afterwards he was like, "Man, if that story is true, we need to write about it." And it's about I got a car stolen from me at gunpoint. Ended up the guy who was stealing the car from me was a killer. He'd killed several people, and God rescued me from that situation miraculously. So they ended up doing this deep dive, um, you know, uh, making sure that the story was accurate and all this stuff. And sure enough, they found that the police records matched my story. So they're like, "We got to do this book." And I think their main goal with it was to produce it for their audience, for the people who support them monthly and all that stuff. And they sent a copy to everybody. But for me, it was an opportunity to share just the faithfulness of God in my life in times when I wasn't necessarily faithful, times that I was struggling or whatever, that I had this father who loved me, who is guiding me, and who is loving me. And the journey of what it means to live to worship, to that recognition that I was made to worship. I come from a pastor's home. Both grandfathers were pastors. I married a pastor's daughter, but I lived in the world. I lived very much, all of the things that you can possibly imagine I've experienced. And so it's kind of the path there of finding the heart of God, the heart of my Father, and capturing what it means to love like Him, and what that fellowship in worship means, and what corporate worship means. I think we put it out right after COVID. They put it out, and so we've been through all of this stuff. We've been through the political craziness, man. So I get to experience, I get to write a little bit about my perspective, of what it means when Jesus says they will know you by your love one for another. It was very
Mm.
discouraging for me to come through the whole COVID season and the racial wars that were happening and see how it was driving a wedge inside the church. And I was like, this is what Jesus meant. Right now, it would be so easy as for us to love one another. And if the world is looking for that unified voice and that unified group of love, it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is or whatever. If our faith is in Christ, then we have something to build our foundation on that can bind us together regardless, and we can love one
Amen.
another in spite of our differences. So I get to write a little bit about that. Um, I came from a church in Kansas City. I'm in Wichita now, but the church that I was a worship pastor at before, very diverse church, and in terms of like racially and all that stuff. And we had on the same stage, we had a drummer who had lost his brother in a very questionable traffic stop, a black guy who lost his life in a traffic stop. And on the same stage, we had a police officer, a white police officer who had been shot, I think, 11 times by 3 black gang members in Kansas City. And they worshiped together. Like, how do we do that? How do we find a way to come together when you do see the world very, very differently, but you can manage to love one another? And what ended up happening is you had this community that got to demonstrate what it meant to love one another in spite of, the way we felt about COVID. You had all the anti-vaxxers and you had the vaxxers in the same building. So
Mm.
I think that kind of experience is a beacon of hope for people, that we can actually not see eye to eye on everything and somehow find a way to trust one another. Like, I trust you. I trust you with your perspective. I don't think you're an idiot for believing the way that you
Mm.
believe. I think that you have a whole different set of circumstances that have led you to a different perspective than I have. So now I can grow. If I trust you, then I can use your friendship as a way to broaden my perspective of the world, and I can see it a little bit differently. And all of a sudden, love grows. Love grows. People that you completely disagree with, you can look at them with respect and honor and say, I respect your life, your background and everything that led you to where you make your decisions politically or whatever. So that's kind of, as weird as that is, that's actually in the book. So more than anything, I hope people take away from it just a person who's gotten to witness the handiwork of God and has gotten to experience just situations where he had to depend and trust on God, and he saw him come through. I think the longer you serve him, the more you realize that he leads you through situations where you get to know him better and you trust him
Yeah.
more and more the older you get. With heavier situations, all of a sudden, the biggest heavy situations come across, and you're like, this is going to be okay. Moses went in 3 chapters. In 3 chapters, he went from, can you send somebody else, to standing before the Red Sea, looking at the entire kingdom of Israel and saying, just stand back and watch the Lord work on your behalf.
Mm.
There's a miraculous change that happened between those 3 chapters or whatever, where all of a sudden he went from, I don't think I can trust you to use me in this, to where, man, I don't care that the Red Sea's in front of us. God's going to do something incredible right now.
Mm.
And that's kind of the encouragement is, I don't know where you are in your faith journey, but keep trusting. The longer you trust him, the easier it gets. He never fails.
Amen. Yeah, it's definitely a book I got to pick up, man. Now that I know it exists, I could actually go get a copy of it. But
Yeah, I wasn't like sending it out to anybody, was I? I wasn't. I really did. I think I put one social media post about it, but they sent it to all their base. I get to talk to their audience through their radio station, and I'm really, really glad that they gave me the opportunity to do that. And I might do some writing in the future. In fact, after I wrote that book, I ended up going to seminary just so I felt a little bit more confident that when I say something, it's not stupid.
mm,
It's funny, you can go to church your whole life, your dad's a pastor and all this stuff, but like all of a sudden I realized, oh man, people take what I say seriously. So I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't saying anything stupid. But so I might do some more writing in the future. It was a lot of fun, the process of writing. But we'll see. I don't know.
well, that's awesome. Well, Phil, it's been a pleasure to have you today, man. I'm glad you're able to join us on here. And, dude, I'm really praying that God can do some big things with this new single, be able to use this book to be able to reach people, be able to encourage people. And, we need that today, man. We need people
I agree.
to be encouraged, to be inspired to stand up and, you know, portray their faith, stand firm on the foundation for Christ, man, because it's needed more today than I believe in any other point in history. We need to be able to show that to people. So, man, I appreciate you joining us today. It's been an honor and pleasure to finally get you on here and catch up, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having. It's been fun talking to you, and God bless you for what you're doing. Really appreciate you and the rest of the folks working with you. It's important work, so thank you.